In this case, some of the doctors don't understand it too well. The evidence in this case is going to show that there was absolutely no culpable negligence on the part of any of these defendants.
No longer is speaking to them. Up until this time, he's been able to communicate. So her and Lieutenant Helms decide it's time to call 911. And through, I believe you'll hear, through the 11 and a half years or so that they have been there, through all the malingering and all the excuses that these kids usually have on intake day, that this is the first time on intake day that they have had to call 911. So they call 911. And another thing that you didn't see, that you will see later on, is that once they called 911 and saw that there may be a problem, they are all down there and they switch to their caregiving mode. She is down there the entire time, listening to his heart, making sure that nothing happens, making sure if something happens, that she has to give him CPR or something changes, that she is there to take care of the situation until EMS arrives. You will have a chance to see that. At this point, she still doesn't know what's wrong with him. She noticed that his pupils were slow to react, that there was some type of change, although he was still breathing fine. And it was something outside of her training that they didn't know what to do at that point. So the EMS arrives. And I anticipate that you will hear from him.
The state will be able to prove that element. There's not any dispute about that. They can prove that Martin Lee Anderson is dead. The second element they've got to prove is that each of these defendants was a caregiver for Martin Lee Anderson. And a caregiver in this case, we've stipulated that we're caregivers. But what that's talking about would be that it's a person responsible for a child's welfare. And when he was in the custody of the Department of Juvenile Justice in the boot camp, that made those employees, such as these defendants, who interacted with him, his caregivers. So we have stipulated that that each of them is a caregiver for Martin Lee Anderson, and the state will be able to prove, already have, that these folks are all caregivers. Now, the evidence will also show that these defendants at all times, every one of them, were concerned caregivers doing their jobs at all times in all of their dealings with Martin Lee Anderson. The next element that the state will be required to prove beyond a reasonable doubt is that Martin Lee Anderson was under the age of 18 years. And again, they'll be able to prove that. The evidence is going to be, I think, that he was about a week short of his 15th birthday. We can all do the arithmetic. That's less than 18 years old. The last element that they have to prove, and this is where the rubber meets the road in this case, they've got to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant, each of the defendants, directly and proximately caused the death of Martin Lee Anderson by neglecting Martin Lee Anderson through culpable negligence. On the event in the boot camp that the capsules were used, there weren't formal written orders for a lot of the duties assumed by the drill instructor.
This right here shows how people feel about young black people in America, how they could just kill you, and it seems like people just get away with it. And instead of people worrying about real topics and real things that's going on in the world, You know what I'm saying? People worrying about a whole lot of foolishness, more or less. People worried about materialistic things, when this is what we need to be worrying about.